Good morning. So, I am an educator. I'm going to ask you all to get up and stand on your feet. We're going to do an activity to begin. I need everybody standing, and some of you may not feel comfortable with this activity, but I ask you to link arms with the person standing next to you, with both people standing next to you. So I want you to link arms at your table. Don't be shy. Link those arms. Yes. Have any of you heard of the concept of Ubuntu? Some of you. Ubuntu is a South African word that means I am who I am because of who we all are. We are all connected. Whether you know the person next to you or will ever talk to them again, our destinies are intertwined. We are all in this together. You can unlink your arms and sit down. But I want you to keep in mind this concept of Ubuntu as I talk to you today. I had so much to say, I decided to write a letter to all of you because all of you are Oregon. So my letter is to Oregon. Dear Oregon, what do you want to be when you grow up? What is the legacy that you wish to leave for your children, grandchildren? You are a beautiful place, replete with snow-capped mountains that rise from the earth like granite towers. Stunning. Environmental sustainability is lived in real time, not just theory. Your residents have a chance to hike in the forest, over sand dunes, or along the Pacific Ocean, depending on the day. You understand food and farming, and your cities boast some of the best restaurants in the country, possibly even the world. Your wine has reached growth proportions beyond what was ever dreamed of or thought possible. And so whether in Burgundy or New York City, people around the world are tasting your bounty. But despite all of this bounty and all of this beauty, we are utterly failing in one of the most important benchmarks of all, and that's nurturing Oregon's children. 746,082 of Oregon's population are school-aged, and if you count children 0 to 5, it is over 1 million. 1 million children in this state.
1/5 of them will never be able to taste your bounty. Nearly 70,000 children between the ages of 16 and 24 are completely disconnected from both school and work. 74% of those children are children of color. We are ranked third from the bottom out of 50 states when it comes to high school graduation rates. I ask you, how would the state be different if 74% of our farmland could not produce to its potential? The good news is, Oregon, you are a place of rebirth, reinvention, and renewables. But sometimes we focus on luxuries and not enough on necessities. And our children's health, their education, and their future is a necessity that we all need to be focused and talking about. You are scrappy, yes. You are scrappy and strong. You have reinvented yourself without losing who you are and what you hold dear. So I ask you, when you look into the future, what do you see for our children? Do you see a system built with children at the center of it? A system that sees every child as precious and worthy and valuable. How do you talk about your children, Oregon? Do you know that the words that we use to describe children actually program our brains and how we think about them? They create schema around the child. And that schema dictates how we interact towards those children. So when we use words like violent and aggressive to describe 4- and 5-year-olds, we are creating a narrative that criminalizes them before they even begin. And it's no wonder that we have a disproportionate discipline issue, that we have a school-to-pipeline prison issue, that we have a disconnected youth issue. We spend $44,000 on an inmate in 1 year. We spend $13,500 on educating a child. Dear Oregon, when you say all children are precious, do you really mean all? Do you see our LGBTQ youth? Do you see that their suicide rates are rising? Do you see the rise in bullying? Do you make sure that every child, regardless of race, regardless of language, socioeconomic status, feels safe and welcome in our schools? I have talked to more children than I can count over the last decade, and I assure you, many children do not feel that way. And it's part of why I co-founded Kairos. And Oregon, what do you believe about our English language learners? Our friends at OHSU will tell you that knowing 2 languages actually makes you smarter. It builds the brain. And yet oftentimes when we talk about these learners, we put at risk in the same sentence. These children are brilliant. I recently had the privilege of going on an educational expedition to Finland. And you'd be surprised to know, though, people often say, what can we learn from Finland? It's a very white country. Finland's demographics are actually very similar to Oregon's. And you know what they do with their immigrant children in Finland? They start by teaching them in their home language first. And when we ask them, really, you start with the home language. Yes, we don't teach them any Finnish in the beginning. Why would we teach them something that is not their culture? Their culture is who they are. Their culture is everything. And we want them to be rooted in who they are before we try to teach them other things. Oregon, do you partner with culturally specific organizations? Do you partner with organizations for whom English is not a first language? Or do you, as a mostly white and English-speaking system, try to do it all yourself? How many of you have grandchildren or children between the ages of 0 to 5? Raise your hand. Many of you. Well, this part of my letter is for you. Dear Oregon, I'm particularly concerned about our youngest children. Do you see an early learning system that supports them prenatally through age 5? Did you know that over 1 million neural connections are being made in every minute in the first years of a child's life? Early years are critical. But Oregon, you don't have a system that supports them. We're building it. It doesn't exist quite yet. We have a council that I sit on. We have an incredible leader in Miriam Calderon. We have a plan. But we have not invested adequate money to support the implementation of the plan, nor have we given enough staff to actually do the things that we need to do to support children 0 to 5 in our state. Some of you may have read a story about a boy named Cyrus. Cyrus died at 4 months old in illegal childcare because we are not investing in enough people to regulate and make sure that these child cares don't exist. We have seen more deaths in illegal child care over the last 15 months than we've seen in the state of Oregon in the last 4 years combined. This is on us, Oregon. This is on all of us. And in higher ed and K-12, we have a tendency to partially subsidize the cost. But for our little babies, our most vulnerable population is based entirely on what the family can afford. And you can imagine who loses out in that scenario. Dear Oregon, you have effectively fought for the rights of workers with more protections and higher minimum wages. But do you believe that teachers matter? Do you understand and appreciate their profession? Do we really pay them adequately? I spent over $125,000 in the 1990s to get a bachelor's degree in education. How many years do you think it takes a teacher to ever make that in 1 year? Do you really believe in the importance of what teachers have to offer when we use language and words that blames them for our budget woes? We cannot be demonizing or blaming anyone. And why do we think that class sizes of 30 or more are acceptable? We have class sizes up to 35 for little kids. How can we think that's acceptable when not one piece of research would ever say that is true? And some of you know that planting crops too close together will reduce their yield. When the teacher can't control her classroom of 30, blame is sprayed around like bullets. It's the teacher's fault. It's the bad kids. It's the bad families. But we don't invest in mentoring for teachers. We don't adequately invest in professional development. We don't partner with families. The system is not set up to succeed, not for the teacher and not for the child. And there are children like Jason. Jason has a learning disability, but Jason loves to learn. And like every child, when they start in school, he is excited and he is ready. But because his class size is so large and because he needs extra attention, Jason is not getting the support that he needs. And that light that drives him grows dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. He becomes promise extinguishing itself. I didn't know I would have to hold the mic, so it makes some of the changing of the papers interesting. Anyway, dear Oregon, we continue to have a tale of two economies. Many communities of color and many rural communities have been left out of the bounty of your beauty, as we heard here today. Depending upon where you live in this state, the pipeline to opportunity is mitigated. Median household income tells us this. Education is supposed to be the equalizer. It's why I devoted my career to education. It is the game changer. On one hand, we find ourselves with skills gaps. On the other hand, we have populations that are ready to learn. We have a workforce ready to be trained. Who sits in the middle of that? Our community colleges. Our community colleges are the equity equation when it comes to access to opportunity. They are the thing that exists, whether in rural communities, frontier communities, or urban centers. They are the place that is responsible for supporting the workforce of the future. They are training the parents and the families of the children we are talking about today. And yet, as a state, we don't fund them. We have underinvested in community colleges for the last 5 years. How can we say we are serious about equity and opportunity for all when we are not investing in the thing that we know, research proves this, makes a difference? Dear Oregon, I am passionate about how I feel, and I believe in your beauty. I love your beauty, and I love your grit. I believe that you can unshackle yourself from a past tainted by some bad decisions by privileged few. It does not have to define your future. There is so much going in the right direction. But for our children, 1 million children, you have to want this. You have to do more than just talk about change. You have to feel it and live it and make decisions that are intentional. You have to be willing to take risks. You cannot be okay with the status quo. You can't fear whether or not you'll lose an election because you support taxes, nor can you ever, as we heard earlier, allow a burden of debt to weigh down millions of children into the future. Oregon, you need courage and you need to lead. 1 million children need our courage. 1 million children need our protection in the way that we protect our national resources. They are our greatest treasure, Oregon. We are in this rare moment in time where change is actually palpable. All of you in this room today are Oregon. We are Oregon. Business leaders, political leaders, education leaders, nonprofit leaders, labor leaders. We have to be united. We are Ubuntu. I am who I am because of who we all are. And 1 million children are depending on us to work together to solve and create a better opportunity for their future.
But it's possible. I know that I am worth it, and I know you know that too. I know that you will see a return on investment when you decide to invest in us.
Dear Oregon, listen to your children.